I want to talk to you guys about false flag attacks. When we hear the term false flag attack, we automatically think conspiracy theorist, or at least some of us do. We think conspiracy theorist. Now, I would say that the bulk majority of claims of false flag attacks are vacuous of any evidence and are really just nonsense. But there are a few claims of false flag attacks that have substantial amounts of evidence. Let's rewind to the year 1946, to Poland, to the area of Poland called Kielce. The Second World War had just finished, and a young boy was kidnapped. A young boy named Henryk Blaszczyk. And he was kidnapped, but then he returned a few days later. And he was told by two men that he had been kidnapped by a gang of Jews. He was manipulated into believing this. The word spread around, and a pogrom was brewing very quickly. Militiamen and soldiers entered the Jewish enclave in Kielce, and they began to murder innocent people. They went to the local rabbi, Rabbi Kahane. One of the gunmen told the rabbi, "Don't worry, Rabbi, it's all going to be over soon." Went behind the rabbi and shot him in the back of the head. They were throwing Jews out of windows so that the mob on the ground could finish them off. They were bayoneting people. There was a family that was murdered. The woman begged for her life and said, "I will give you all of my money. I will give you all of my jewelry if you just spare my life and the life of my child." And she had a very young infant. And the gunmen thought about it, and they said, "You know what? We're going to kill these people anyway." And so they killed these people. They shot the woman. They shot the baby mercilessly. No mercy. The mob was gathering. They saw militiamen, soldiers murdering Jews. If the soldiers are doing it, if the local militia is doing it, then they must have found the bad guys, because they would never just start killing people out of the blue unless these were the people involved in the kidnapping of this boy. So a pogrom ensued, and a lot of innocent people were murdered. I believe around 50 or so Jews were murdered in the end of this. And here is the interesting thing about this story. Just literally 7 blocks away from where these murders took place were all of the security departments, all of the buildings that represented the institutions of security that would have been necessary to stop this pogrom from getting any worse. Just 7 blocks away, all of these security buildings were present. And they could have intervened and prevented this pogrom from getting any worse, but they didn't. I'm reading this book. It's called Poland's Holocaust by Tadeusz Petrovsky. And he mentions these security buildings that were in the area just 7 blocks away from where the pogrom took place. And he says, all the essential elements of effective crowd control were present literally within blocks of 7 Planty Street, where the pogrom took place. The Commissariat of the Civil Militia, the Provincial Office of State Security, the headquarters of the 2nd Infantry Division, the Fire Department, and the Militia School with its cadets, which was the farthest away, a mere 10-minute march. So just minutes away was the fire department. Just minutes away was the local militia. And they did not intervene. Something very wrong is in this picture. The U.S. ambassador who was in Poland at the time, Ambassador Arthur Bliss Lane, concluded that the pogrom was not something that came out of the blue, but was the result of a very carefully done plan. And he wrote, quote, "Although the violence of the pogrom might have given the impression that the tragic happening was due primarily to uncontrolled racial passions, both government and anti-government sources admitted that it was not spontaneous, but a carefully organized plot." And the historian Tadeusz Petrovsky explains in this book how this was a false flag attack, how it was organized, and how it was the result of a strategy of propaganda and mass manipulation. Kidnap a boy, manipulate the young boy into thinking that he was kidnapped by Jews, allow the word to spread around, and then have people of legitimate authority shed first blood. Because it was the soldiers and the militiamen who began killing the Jews. And the mob, seeing the soldiers killing people, thought, well, the soldiers, they must have found the people responsible, because they would not be killing random people. If they're going to be killing people, they're going to be eliminating those who are responsible for this crime. So we have finally found the ones who are responsible for the crime of kidnapping this young boy. Seeing the soldiers, people of authority, doing it, let us also indulge in this passion of hysteria. So they felt themselves justified in killing innocent people because they saw the soldiers doing it and they saw the militia doing it. And the mob went hysterical. It was mob violence. And so this was the result of mass manipulation and propaganda. Now, reading about this story, it makes me think about cases of false flag attacks, or an attempt at doing a false flag attack, that have taken place within our own time. A number of years ago, a German officer pretended to be a Syrian refugee, and he was planning on committing a terrorist attack with the hopes that the media would talk about how a terrorist attack was done by a Syrian refugee, so that the German public could lash out against refugees. Manipulation. It reminds me of Operation Gladio. And if you are interested in the phenomena of false flag attacks, I highly recommend that you read the book NATO's Secret Armies by David Ganser, which is a very well written book, and that has a lot of documentation about how NATO during the Cold War actually organized terrorist attacks. Intelligence agencies in NATO organized terrorist attacks, coordinated terrorist attacks, so that the communists could then be blamed for them, so that people would hate communists. And this was a part of NATO's Cold War propaganda scheme. And it's pretty sick because they were actually willing to mass murder innocent people so they could get a headline in the news. During Operation Gladio, dozens of people were murdered. And by dozens, I mean over 80 people were murdered in Bologna, Italy. And there was a bomb attack in a plaza in the city of Bologna. Dozens of people were murdered. And this terrorist attack was blamed on the Reds, on the communists. It was later admitted by one of the terrorists involved that the attack was coordinated by Italian intelligence, and it was done for the purpose of Gladio. There were numerous other attacks that were done in Europe under Operation Gladio, And these were all done as a way to create headlines that communists were out to murder innocent Europeans in order to spark nationalism throughout Europe. And looking at this recent history, it makes me wonder about the refugee crisis, how much of that was organized in order to manipulate people into becoming ultra nationalistic. It makes me wonder about other terrorist attacks that have taken place within recent memory and the possibility of these attacks being organized as a way to mass manipulate people. Anyway, it's just a thought. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.